This is the Poco F1, the phone that literally needs no introduction right now. This is by far the most affordable flagship smartphone in the world with a Snapdragon 845. In India, it costs Rs 21,000 for the 6GB of RAM and 64GB of storage base variant. It's just nuts pricing. So I've been using the Poco F1 since the day of the launch here in India, and I've spent literally every waking hour with it, so I can answer two questions for you guys, two questions that must be in everyone's minds right now. First, what are the compromises on the Poco F1? Secondly, is the Poco F1 as good, if not better, than other budget flagship competitors like the Asus Zenfone 5Z, the OnePlus 6 and the Honor Play? All those questions and more will be answered in my detailed review of the Poco F1. Hi, I'm Ershad, and let's get right down to it. So before we jump into our full review, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon right next to it to get notified whenever we put out a new awesome tech video. So let's start off with the design. The Poco F1 is definitely not a looker, but to call it a bad design would be a little too far-fetched. It is a utilitarian design with a big emphasis on daily usage. Poco's reasoning for a staid design is that most people use the phone with a case, and therefore, why does it matter if the phone has a glass or a metal body? If it helps cut costs, then toughened plastic is not a bad option either. And I'm mostly in line with this theory. Like most of the reviewers out there, we also got the armored edition of the Poco F1, which has a Kevlar back for review. But I can tell you this, I've also seen the polycarbonate variants at the launch. They all look okay at best, but they feel good to use. The material used on the rear ensures that the phone is not slippery. Polycarbonate or Kevlar, both. Our armored variant is definitely pretty damn grippy, which is a refreshing change from all the glass back phones I've used all year, because all these phones used to slip from my hands easily. However, the Kevlar back variant also attracts smudges and it sticks on the phone. It is not easy to remove these smudges either. Thankfully, it is not very visible, so that's a good thing. Furthermore, the Poco F1 feels extremely sturdy to use. And I can tell you this with personal experience, primarily because I dropped it on a couple of occasions while reviewing it. Obviously, I didn't do that on purpose, it happened inadvertently. But what is the takeaway from that is that not so much as even a scratch was registered on the body of the Poco F1. Also on the rear is the module that has the dual cameras and the fingerprint scanner. The flash is placed next to it. One of the best things about the fingerprint scanner is that it is not only easy to reach, but it is also recessed. This means that you can easily get a feel for it from the rear. Very minor detail, but very useful. Also, the fingerprint scanner is super fast. In fact, Poco has literally cut down on the screen animation, making the fingerprint scanner feel faster than usual. That's not it, the facial recognition is faster as well. And thanks to the infrared scanner, the phone can easily recognize you even in the dark. It is better than the OnePlus 6 if I must say so. The Master of Speed tagline of the Poco F1 is apt for its blazing fast unlocking capabilities. The left edge has the SIM card tray, which is a hybrid setup. It can take 2 nano SIM cards or 1 nano SIM card and 1 micro SD card. At the bottom, you get the USB Type-C port, but internally, you only get USB 2.0 speeds. This port can also be used as an OTG driver for pen drives. So if you want to add even more storage, you're sorted. Flanking the USB Type-C port on either sides are speaker holes. Only the one on the right is the speaker and the one on the left is there just for show. But the Poco F1 has a set of stereo speakers with the earpiece actually working as the secondary speaker. And the quality of the speaker is great, which I'll talk about in the multimedia section of the review. Fun fact, the LED notification light sits on the bottom chin. I have never seen such a placement before. Coming to the display, the front of the Poco F1 is the most unattractive side of the phone. The big notch is an eyesore and the phone has a massive chin as well. Thankfully, the notch houses an infrared sensor for faster face scanning, so its big size is a trade-off I can take. The display is a large 6.18-inch IPS LCD panel. It has muted colors and the brightness levels are very low. I couldn't read on the screen properly when I was out and about in bright sunlight. Xiaomi does give you the option to tweak the display settings, but I could never get the right color temperature. On the bright side, no pun intended, you can turn off the notch. But the edges of the notch are not aligned with the curved edge of the display at the bottom. So that's a bummer for those who have an OCD for good symmetry like me. As for the protection, the display has a layer of Corning Gorilla Glass 3 for protection from scratches and drops. Overall though, the display quality on the POCO F1 is not flagship grade, and it looks like POCO has made some compromises in this area. Talking about display, what do you guys think of the new wallpaper? If you want to download it, there is a link in the description below. One of the coolest things about the POCO F1 is MIUI 9 with POCO Launcher. It now has an app drawer which is not available on MIUI, and it is actually a lot versatile compared to other app drawers that I've seen in other phones. Also, the POCO Launcher has a lot of other tweaks. Let me just break it down for you. Firstly, you get Gboard by default, which is also available on MIUI. I shall immediately grant brownie points for that. Secondly, you can invoke the app drawer by pulling up from the bottom. This launcher lines up all the apps vertically. It also automatically bunches apps of the same kind in different categories. However, this is not very accurate at the moment. For example, while I have Asphalt 9 installed on my phone, the games page doesn't have it. The search bar for apps has been placed at the bottom. I can't even begin to tell you how useful it is to have the search bar in this location. You can also group icons by color. Basically, the launcher identifies app icons of the same color and bunches them at the bottom. People who appreciate visual cues will like this approach. However, it moves the search bar at the bottom to the bottom right corner as a small icon. Thankfully, it still needs one single tap to search. The notification shade toggles are clean and neat, and it looks mostly like stock Android. Even the settings app is rather clean. Since the phone has MIUI 9, you also get gestures by default. I like gestures more than navigation buttons, but in the POCO F1 you have to swipe and hold from the left or the right to go back. While this is the most intuitive way to do it, this method interferes occasionally with apps that use material design and have a slide out panel for menu. A cool addition to the launcher, which I saw only in Zen UI before this, is that you can add custom icon packs. I love that. Another small gripe I have with the launcher is that sometimes you get served ads in the shelf area that is available to the left on the home screen. That's definitely not cool. Also, while the shelf is nice, I never used it once in my time with the phone. Also, for some odd reason, the POCO F1 is filled with a lot of third-party apps. I don't want to call them bloat, but we could have done without Netflix being added by default. To add on to the cons, I couldn't find a way to reply to a message directly from the notification shade itself. You do get a reply button, but that takes you inside the app in certain apps, and only certain messaging apps like WhatsApp allow you to reply directly from the notification shade. But it is still a very convoluted process. I noticed a small bug in my time with the phone. At times when I wanted to swipe up for the app drawer, it would throw up a blank page instead. For context, I had more than 130 apps installed on my phone, so maybe it's because of that. I know it's not a software thing exclusively, but the haptic feedback is really friggin' good. It is one of the best I have experienced on any Android flagship. It is almost as good as the iPhone X, and that's saying a lot. Overall, the POCO launcher on the POCO F1 is a great fork of MIUI, and I'm really glad that it does things differently. The POCO F1 has a 12 megapixel plus 5 megapixel camera setup on the rear. The 12MP camera has a large 1.4 micron pixel size, and the 5MP secondary camera is used for depth information. The setup is similar to the camera in the Mi Mix 2S and the Mi 8. On the front, you get a 20 megapixel camera with an f/2.0 aperture lens, which is the same setup as the one from the Redmi Note 5 Pro. At least the camera hardware, a mix and match of components from Xiaomi's different phones, looks good on paper. I did a complete camera comparison with the OnePlus 6, which can serve as the complete camera review for the POCO F1. You can check a link to the video in the card somewhere on top. What I will do is highlight all the important points of my camera tests in simple pointers as usual. Number 1, the AI mode in camera can be switched on or off, but all it does is boost the colors and brightness. I'm not a fan of pictures captured by the AI mode. Secondly, the HDR mode is pretty good on the POCO F1. Moving on, the rear camera can capture decent details in daylight, and the lens attached to the primary 12 megapixel sensor shoots at 20mm, which is a 35mm equivalent. This means that you get a wider image than most other flagship cameras. Most of the close-up shots come out in a warm color temperature. Also, the POCO F1 has trouble in focusing in close range. In low light samples, you can clearly see that the camera algorithm works overtime to kill the noise. Also, the low light performance is not particularly great. On the other hand, the flash performance is surprisingly good. The video camera cannot do electronic image stabilization in the moment at 4K recording. And so is the case with the front camera, which cannot do any sort of stabilization. Despite the fact that the image quality in video recording is pretty good, the lack of stabilization is a letdown for sure. And the sound recording is not too great either. The phone can also shoot 240 fps 1080p slow motion video. If you find enough light, you can shoot a great slow motion footage, no doubt. The portrait mode on the rear camera is not bad at all. I like the cutout. The front camera can shoot decent selfies, but it looks like beauty mode is on by default, even when it is not. Also, there is some level of AI element in the beauty mode. I don't care for it really. In short, the Poco F1's cameras are good enough for social media uploads, but they're not flagship grade in my opinion. If you're wondering, the OnePlus 6 and the Zenfone 5Z definitely take better pictures. Like its name suggests, the Poco F1 is like an F1 car. It's super fast. And why wouldn't it be? It's got a Snapdragon 845 chipset, and our review variant comes with 8 gigs of RAM and 256 GB of storage, and with the ability to expand further 256 GB using a micro SD card. That's just plain crazy specs for a phone that costs only Rs 21,000. And in my time with the Poco F1, I was completely taken aback by the responsiveness of the phone. In a good way, of course. I did a detailed performance comparison with the OnePlus 6, and the Poco F1 was equally fast and responsive. You can play graphics intensive games like PUBG with far better stability than you can on the OnePlus 6. What this means is that you will get a constant FPS performance while playing a game like PUBG with fewer frame drops. Also, thanks to the liquid cooling technology achieved by the vapor-based copper heatsink inside the phone, the Poco F1's temperatures are mostly kept in check. I had a lot of fun playing games on the phone, honestly. The phone also keeps apps in memory without shutting them down unnecessarily. The speed of the Poco F1 is actually achieved by the fact that Xiaomi sub-brand Poco is concentrating on sustained performance than peak performance. Like when we achieve peak performance whenever we put out a video on first day, and then it's a sustained low performance day 2 onwards. I'm just kidding. We never hit peak performance. After using the phone, I'm convinced that it won't be too far-fetched to call the Poco F1 the master of speed like the brand does. One thing that took me completely by surprise is the audio quality. The Poco F1 has the same amplifier setup as the one inside the Mi A2. This means you get an impressive sound quality through the 3.5mm jack. I used the FiiO FH5 with the phone, and I had to keep the volume levels at 60% because it got too loud otherwise. I liked the dynamics and the signature on offer. Moreover, if you're a fan of wireless audio, the phone also supports high bitrate Bluetooth codecs for improved audio quality like aptX, aptX HD and LDAC. Also, the stereo speaker setup is great too. No complaints there. If only the display were of better flagship grade quality, it would have rounded up the phone as a great multimedia package. For my testing purposes, I used the phone in the Delhi NCR region with my Airtel SIM inside the SIM1 slot. Unfortunately, I don't get VoLTE for some odd reason, but the call quality through the earpiece is great. The phone offers a crystal clear sound, and I didn't notice any distortion whatsoever. Also, the network was never patchy, and I never had a single 4G connection issue. But I did face a call drop in my lift test, which is fine because most phones do not survive. Moving on to the battery life. In one of my moderate usage sessions, I actually got 7 hours and 14 minutes of screen on time. And in another heavy usage cycle, I achieved 5 hours and 33 minutes of screen on time. Essentially, the phone with its 4000 mAh battery will easily last you a day's worth of heavy usage, even if you play 2 hours of PUBG daily. It also supports quick charge 3.0 fast charging. In the box, you get a 9V 2A charger. I managed to charge the phone from 0 to 100 using this charger in 2 hours and 20 minutes. It's not very fast, but maybe you can get a powerful brick for improved performance. So we've come to that part of the review where I tell you if you should buy a phone or not. So should you buy the Poco F1? Yes, absolutely. But can you buy one? Now that is a question that can only be answered by if you achieve success in a flash sale. Most of the users are going to be disappointed that you didn't get one. But I have to tell you this, it is worth trying because right now, at the moment, there is no other phone that offers this level of performance at this kind of pricing. There are very few compromises, and in some cases, the Poco F1 actually performs better than the OnePlus 6 and the Asus Zenfone 5Z. For example, it is better than the OnePlus 6 when it comes to audio performance. Also, it has a better battery life than the OnePlus 6 and the Asus Zenfone 5Z. More importantly, it is at least Rs 10,000 cheaper than both the phones. However, there are still many reasons why someone would argue that the OnePlus 6 and the Zenfone 5Z are better than the Poco F1. For example, the OnePlus 6 has way better cameras than the Poco F1. Also, the OnePlus 6 has a classier, more streamlined design. And the OnePlus 6 is a whole lot faster as well. The Zenfone 5Z compared to the Poco F1 has some neat AI tricks up its sleeve. I really like the AI battery management on that one. And the Zenfone 5Z's IPS LCD panel is honestly way better than the Poco F1's. And there are many more reasons like this which I will highlight in a complete comparison video, but for now this should help. And what I really don't understand is how Xiaomi managed to pull this off. While the OnePlus 6, the Asus Zenfone 5Z and the Honor Play offer great value for money, the Poco F1 is probably the only budget flagship right now that offers you more than what you paid for. It essentially captures the pulse of the Indian smartphone market, which is heavily price sensitive and specs hungry. I really cannot wait to see what Poco has in stores for us next year and what the follow-up Poco F2 will look like. But if Poco goes the OnePlus route, then we're looking at increased prices. So it just makes sense for you to buy the Poco F1 this year by hook or by crook, because phones like the Poco F1 are not going to happen every year. So that's it from me. I'm Ashar from Mr. Phone. I hope you liked our full comprehensive review of the Poco F1. Do give us a feedback in the comment section below and we will answer your questions if you have any too. Until next time, goodbye. See you around. This is Ashar from Mr. Phone signing off.